Wonderful. Excellent. And so I welcome you all to our ZerOctober Masterclass. Thank you for being here on this Thursday evening. Just very briefly, and we'll go into some more details as we progress, but ZerOctober is the veterinary profession's month of sustainable action. Vets for Climate Action is proud to launch this initiative and build a movement towards a sustainable future for the animals we love and care for. Throughout ZerOctober, we're raising awareness about the importance of working to reduce greenhouse gas emissions at home and in practice. And this masterclass is one of the ways that we're sharing activities and steps that you can take. Together as a profession, we can definitely take action towards a sustainable, thriving planet, perfect for us and the animals that we love. Now, before I go too much further, I would like to acknowledge and pay respects to our First Nations people, past and present, and any on the call tonight. Traditional owners have cared for this country upon which we work and meet for over 60,000 years. They've cared for its lands, oceans, rivers, its trees, and wildlife. Vets for Climate Action endorses the Uluru Statement and acknowledges that this land has never been ceded. And I often think, our First Nations people have long understood that healthy people, healthy animals, and healthy country are all deeply interconnected, which ties in really well with the veterinary concept of One Health. And that is a really important tenet of our work here at Vets for Climate Action. I invite you to pop in the chat where you're dialing in from tonight. I'm coming to you from Gadigal country of the Eora Nation, beautiful part of the world, and I'm very close to the harbours and the oysters that fed the Gadigal people over the years. So just a few housekeeping things. As I mentioned, and as you would know as you've joined, is that the webinar is being recorded and it will be shared after the event for anyone who hasn't made it. And we'll ask during the main parts of the presentation that you keep your microphone muted, and please post any questions you may have in the chat, or leave them for the Q&A later on. If we miss your question or we've run out of time, you are very welcome to email us afterwards at info@vfca.org.au. So I'll start very briefly with an intro about Vets for Climate Action for those who may not be familiar with the work that we're doing. We represent concerned vets, vet nurses, practices and industry partners across Australia who want climate action. Vet professionals like you hold a unique place in the heart of our communities. You're highly trusted professionals spanning multiple fields with expertise in livestock, wildlife, pet health and welfare, epidemiology, public health and the environment. I know from experience that you can comfortably talk to anyone about the health of animals and distill quite complex scientific topics into digestible pieces, and you can share the importance of stable environments and the need for immediate climate action. At Vets for Climate Action, we are working to inspire and educate both within the profession and to the wider community. And we're doing that through our climate care program. We're doing it through events like this, our masterclasses, and also attending the professional events like the Vet Expo next week. Hopefully I'll see a few of you there. We do a lot of advocacy work as well because we are looking for strong leadership on climate at all levels, so from government, business and the community. At Vets for Climate Action, we're a voice for all animals and we invite you to join us and add your voice to ours. So as I said, ZerOctober is an initiative that we have started this month to promote sustainable veterinary care and celebrate the benefits of moving the veterinary profession towards zero. August is well established as Dental Care Month in the veterinary profession, and we really want to put the same energy into making October the month of veterinary sustainability. So ZerOctober. When you see it written, we sort of struggled how we'd pronounce it. Was it ZerOctober? We just landed on ZerOctober. So pretend there's another O in there. But this is an opportunity for veterinary teams and industry professionals to share ideas, to celebrate success and promote the benefits of sustainability and a path to zero. So there's a few words that we've thrown in there: sustainability and net zero. And our first speaker is going to distill those for us. So I'm very pleased that we are being joined by Nicola Craddock, the Executive Director of the Zoo and Aquarium Association Australasia, or ZAR. Nicola is committed to wildlife conservation, positive animal welfare, and sustainable operations. Driven to deliver impact, Nicola is committed to ZAR's vision, positive outcomes for wildlife and people. She has an MBA and is a graduate of the Australian Institute of Company Directors. And with a blend of non-profit and corporate experience. Sorry for stumbling over that one. Working in a sector that connects people with nature is a privilege, and it is also a responsibility to support education and action for nature positive solutions. So I shall hand over to Nicola and stop sharing my screen so she can share her own.
Thank you. Thank you, Steph. That sounds a very grand bio. I'm not sure that I'm really that worthy of it, but thank you for the lovely introduction. And hello to everyone. Good evening. It's lovely to be here. Have the opportunity to speak with you all. And I understand this is a masterclass, and as a masterclass, you know, I guess you have a masterclass when you're taking early steps or when you're looking to sort of go from great to perfect. But what I'm going to share with you today, I guess, is sort of like blowing the whole concept wide open and looking beyond what you, I guess, intuitively understand as sustainable practices within your organisation and looking at the big picture. So we start with a global lens and then we come down into, you know, what can that be? Not so much as an individual organisation, but as combining a network and looking at partnerships, thinking with innovation and really, I guess, sort of, you know, ensuring that your destiny is only limited by your own imagination. So I think that I have shared my screen. And how does that look, Steph? Is that all right?
Yep, looking great. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so as I said, things that we're going to look at in the next 10 minutes. So it's a real flash fly course. So things to consider. We're going to look at global, national and state commitments. Some of these you already know. Throwing open adaptation and mitigation, the two things that sort of do need to sit side by side. The greenhouse gas protocol, scopes and emissions. There's many complex components to reporting and being able to formalise your efforts. This is just one of those. And then organisational benefits and innovations and other sorts of ideas, and then what you can think of going forward. So things to consider. So increasing knowledge and understanding. It is such a complex space. There's always something to learn, always something to consider. There's many ideas, there's many podcasts, there's many sources of information. And I would encourage you to pick a few that you really trust and spend the time really just immersing yourself in those things and thinking, I guess, holistically and strategically how that you would apply those to your life. And as I said, you know, right in my introduction, this isn't about just adding sort of certain processes to your organisation or to your home life, but really thinking what your long-term vision for yourself and your organisation or your family is and how you can sort of reach that in a grander scale. Innovation is really the thing. And I think we need wholesale change to be able to achieve the commitments that we have at a country or national level. And that's only going to come with innovation. So approach this with an open mind, but also an air of excitement of what can you do differently and what could it look like. With that always comes barriers to change, but all barriers can be overcome if they can be identified and planned for. And so with that, you can formulate some sort of actions. Those are the things that you need to consider as you sort of start on this voyage or on this journey. And I know some of you, I was just talking to Dr. Jeremy, and I understand he's got net zero practice, which is amazing. So some of these things are well understood within some of our audience here tonight, but I also do think there's always something good to learn and things that we haven't necessarily thought of. And so just taking a step back and just putting it simply, the context of what we're looking at here is climate change. And climate change refers to the long-term changes in climate patterns caused by rising temperatures. And the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, that's the IPCC, confirms global average temperatures to be 1.1 degrees Celsius higher than pre-industrial levels, with clear and detrimental impact on ecosystems, biodiversity, economies, society, and human health. So climate change will, as we know, will impact and affect everything. Temperature rises are linked to an increase in greenhouse gases, with carbon dioxide being the most abundant. There's lots and lots of detail out there. I can distill it in this point down to 3 lines. And with that comes a recognition globally that we need action. And in 2015, as you know, the Paris Climate Agreement was pulled together. It was ratified by 196 countries. And those countries made a commitment to hold the increase in the global average temperature to well below 2 degrees centigrade, making efforts to target about 1.5. 1.5 requires a 50% reduction in net emissions by 2030 and net zero by 2050. But 2015, when this agreement was made, is 9 years ago. And if we're looking to reduce our net emissions by 50% by 2030, can we honestly say that we've made huge changes within our own organisations or our own households to be able to reach that goal? 2030 is 5 years away, which is really the nexus or the scary thing, or the thing that really prompts us into thinking, very, very differently. And so what does that mean? And I do love data. So those of you that love data, so this is an amazing chart. It's the reporting from 2021. It's a great website. If you find this website, I really encourage you to look at it. For the nerds amongst us, wonderful things to be found. In 2021, we can look at the world's largest greenhouse gas emitting countries. So they're all there stacked up in order. But the interesting thing is, what drives greenhouse gas emissions or carbon dioxide emissions is people. And the population is a very significant component of that. So Australia, as you can see here, is ranked 14th in the world of the largest greenhouse gas emitting countries. We've got 26 million people. We're very small in our population. And you can see there in the nice turquoise dot, right up on the highest level, is that we have one of the highest emissions per person in the world. We're a first world country. We've got the resource, we've got the science, we've got the knowledge, we've got the education, and yet we have got the highest emissions per person, one of the highest emissions per person in the world, even though we're ranked 14th, which is not great also. So at that global and country level, we can see we've got a lot of work to do. It's always good to look at New Zealand as well, just to anchor ourselves and check to see whether, down here in the bottom of the world, are we actually on par with our neighbours? No, we're still in a worse state than New Zealand, who are sitting at around 14 odd million tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalents per person. They're not in a great spot either, even though their share of emissions is a lot lower. And so where do our Australian emissions come from? So, if we're looking to have impact and be able to make some changes and to be able to support our countries in making a change and reducing its overall emissions, where are the areas that we can see that would have a go? And in 2022, this is the 2023 report that was released by DQ middle of the year. The 22-23 decline in emissions was 0.5%. We only managed to take 0.5%. We're meant to be focused on this, and we've only lost 0.5% in this last year. The biggest decline coming from electricity, which was 2.8% versus 2022. And you can see that there, that electricity is our biggest share of emission. And it's really quite interesting. If that's the key driver, then what can we do? And I think we're all fairly familiar with the thought about renewable energy and changing our energy supplies and those types of things. That is a big and quite a scary thing to do, because it's not that straightforward, and a lot of the energy companies make that quite tricky to do, but it would make a big impact. We can also link that up with transport. If we look at transport, that's something else that we can do within our own sort of daily sphere of influence. We can make some changes to that. And funnily enough, if you look at reducing your transport or shifting your transport over to electric, you will have a positive impact on that electric number. But if the electric is renewable, it will sort of it will have less effect. Waste we can do something with, and also land use and land use change in forestry. There's a lot of starting to be a lot of emerging opportunities to reinvest in biodiversity, in looking at reforesting and rewilding spaces. So we have got some potential to be able to make an impact into those carbon sinks or those net sinks that will help balance some of the emissions that are coming through. Looking at the stationary energies and the fugitive energy emissions as well. Now, those are sort of not necessarily familiar terms for us, but fugitive emissions, stationary energy, excluding electricity, includes emissions from direct combustion of fuels, predominantly from manufacturing, mining, residential and commercial subsectors. And fugitive emissions occur during the production or processing and transport and storage and transmission of distribution of fossil fuels, i.e., coal and crude oil, etc. So if you're able to consider moving your energy across to renewable energy, I think by design, as I understand it, you'll be able to reduce your impact through stationary energy and fugitive emissions. So just a few things like that we've just talked about. Enables you to reduce that energy line. It enables you to pull out some of the green on the fugitive and the stationary energy line. Transport, we've talked about, is something that every city is trying to work on. And then that waste and sort of, looking to see where we can do with our rewilding. So it's not insurmountable, but it does require some real change and some real different ways of thinking. And as I said, always good to see what New Zealand is up to. Now look at New Zealand's electricity generation at a really low percentage of their total emissions. New Zealand has been running on renewable energy for many, many years. They were one of the leaders in renewable energy back in 1990. So you can see that impact in the different shape of this chart, having their transport and their agriculture as their lead emission contributors. So very different the way that that country has operated, and it is sort of, I guess, structured itself from the very, very start. So going back to Australia, and we were looking at where we were and what those emission contributors were and what our goals were. So within the Paris Agreement, it requires all signatory countries to identify their national determined contributions. And we've got a national determined contribution. We've also got that at a state level in Australia. And our Australian federal government's climate change bill, which was ratified in September 22, outlines our NDC as being a 43% reduction versus our 2005 levels by 2030 and then net zero by 2050. We are on the way there. We are currently sitting at 29% reduction versus 2005. So we've made good progress, but as we all know, it's easy on the low-hanging fruit. And as we get closer to the pointy end, it becomes harder and harder. And those things that we're looking at and renewable energy and shifting those ways that we do things is really got to be done at an individual level, at an organisational level. There's some of the bigger areas of change have already happened. And then if we look at a state level, and I've seen on the chat, we've got people from a number of different states, we've got different goals. So 50% reduction in New South Wales, 50% Victoria, a lower goal in Queensland at this point in time. South Australia it has at least 50%, but it's making huge headway in renewable energy, and it's up to around about 70% in its renewable energy changes. And Tasmania has got itself into a net zero position already. So those are things that we need to keep an eye out. We're not going to hit those numbers if we're not doing that at a micro level as well. We talked about these strategies or these thoughts or these goals, if you like, and how do you get there? And you can do that through adaptation, mitigation. We can adapt the way, or we can mitigate the way that we make changes. We can mitigate refers to measures that governments and businesses and other actors take to proactively combat the causes by reducing and preventing further emissions. So looking at way we can reduce that completely. There's also other things you can do through adaptation, and adaptation refers to the processes of adjusting and responding to actual or expected physical climate change. But you've got to make those changes fairly soon. The longer you delay your adaptation, the more expensive it becomes, the more urgent it becomes, and the more you need to throw money at it to be able to provide that change or achieve that change. So you need mitigation and adaptation. They're both needed. And I'm not sure how many of you have been following the federal government's CBD biodiversity framework, and the goals that they put forward in there. And they're really sort of sitting hard on the adaptation and less on the mitigation. And those are, again, things to, to look at and think of and follow from a national level. Greenhouse gas protocols, scopes and emissions. As I said at the very beginning, there's a number of different models that are available across the world on how you can effectively measure and how you can effectively report. It's one of those things that is still, I guess, still being worked on, and a uniformity of it would be really, really helpful. This is just one of the ways, but it's a really clear way, I think, to follow. Companies tend to focus on emissions from their own operations. We're looking at emission reduction, and the Greenhouse Gas Protocol has split those scopes into scope 1, 2, and 3, and I'm sure that you're very familiar with these and very aware of them. Organisations need to account for their emissions along their value chains, though, and that will be their scope 3. And it's very simple to get your 1 and 2 scopes done. The real challenge comes in scope 3. And if there is a mass push around scope 3, then that will be a lot more easy to achieve, because each organisation across the value chain is responsible then for their own 1 and 2, which would resolve a lot of issues for scope 3. For those, I'm sure you're familiar with this diagram. But I just want to take a moment on scope 2. It's a reasonable piece, and it really sort of falls back into that electricity or that energy column that we were looking at earlier. And if we're going to sort of, I guess, look at innovation or look at other ways or look at organisations across the globe that have been able to achieve some great things, one of the organisations that I like to look at is Ørsted. It's an energy organisation or a huge organisation from Europe. I think it's Danish-based. It has a vision to create a world that runs entirely on green energy, and it's been moving in this transition for the last 20 years. It was entirely fossil fuel from the start, and over time has moved to almost entirely wind-powered now. Nearly 75% of global carbon emissions come from energy use, as we've just seen, mainly from burning fossil fuels, and fossil fuel pollution harms people and the planet, as we know. And just to encourage you to look at as many different organisations as you can, seek out those organisations that have done amazing things and see how they've done it, and see if there's any learnings that can be taken on board for your own organisation or even just your own interest. And this particular organisation, so they are very, very invested. On their website, they can present exactly the sort of the pieces that they've been looking at. It is a global organisation. Ørsted has I really see in the corner with the items. They're very invested in not just in their emission reduction, but looking at biodiversity and looking at sort of opportunities for people, and approaching their sustainability journey as a holistic piece or a holistic strategy for their organisation. And unless you can see very much from this that unless you can get sustainability into the core of your strategy, it's very, very difficult to maintain it. It continues to be an add-on to what you're doing rather than the core of your values and the core of your organisation. And you can see, if you sort of look at these various different icons, that look, they're growing coral on their wind turbine foundations. They're looking at the biodiversity, the impacts they're having on the ocean floor, and ensuring that they're able to meet some of those other nature needs. They've got the opportunity to understand bird behaviour from the offshore wind farms with AI. So that what else can we do in order to support nature positive solutions? So a number of these types of initiatives, and if you sort of have a look around what's available from this organisation, it's really quite inspiring. So moving on. So take the time to explore organisations with best practice and consider partnerships within your own landscape to amplify impact. And the benefits for business for taking this strategic direction, measuring your organisation's carbon footprint is really your first point. You're looking at your baseline and you're looking at your opportunity to sort of move in a direction and track it as you go. You're looking at the opportunity for an enhanced reputation. You know, very soon organisations will be very much measured on the way they're able to present how they are managing a sustainable footprint. You've also got the benefit of energy savings, and you've got preparation and resilience against further regulation. You've got a head start on that type of thing. But most importantly, you've started to take on that innovation focus, which is a really exciting place to be as an organisation. And then just my last point here is really just a long list of resources that you can sort of take a look at that will help you on your journey. First one, the Climate Care Program. So I'm going to leave it at that, Steph. I think
Thank
I've
you so much.
well have gone over my time, so I do apologise.
Not at all. I'm happy to let you go because the information you were sharing was so important. And thank you for, you know, sharing with us and giving us that big picture around the importance of sustainability and action on climate change, particularly with an international lens and through Australia's own commitment. And I think, yes, it was very telling, the power of renewables, which happens to be the title of one of our modules in the Climate Care Program. So thanks for that, allowing us that little segue, which is wonderful. So I'm going to open it up to our panel, and because we do have some other speakers who are going to join us. And what they'll do is they'll speak for 3 or 4 minutes about practices that they are engaging in to drive more sustainable veterinary care, and, you know, perhaps sharing a few tips and tricks. So bear with me as I just spotlight them so that you can see everybody, and then I'll do an introduction. Now I've got to find Alex. There she is. Okie doke. So we should see on our screen there Elise Anderson, who is Vet for Climate Action's Rural and Regional Lead. And we've also got Alex Watson from Mona Vale Veterinary Hospital. Dr. Jeremy Watson, who's not so much a special guest as probably, you know, one of our most regular speakers, but we're always happy to invite him back. And of course, we've just heard from Nicola. So Jeremy, I'll introduce you, and then I might ask you to share your story. Jeremy Watson is this year's VBG Thought Leader. He graduated from Melbourne Uni in 1986, and by 1998 had established the Brimbank Vet Clinic, now a 5-vet small animal practice in suburban Melbourne. In 2011, Brimbank was, hang on, I just lost myself there. Brimbank was rebuilt, incorporating the latest environmental design features, facilitating a pathway to make the practice carbon neutral. It is now the first veterinary clinic in Australia to become certified carbon neutral on the Australian Government Climate Active Register. Jeremy has completed short courses in circular economics and net zero through Cambridge Uni. He joined Vets for Climate Action to help amplify the role veterinary teams can play in motivating the vet community to take urgent action, and has played an integral part in developing the Climate Care Program, and is now chair of the Climate Care Advisory Committee. Jeremy, would you like to take it away? You've got the floor for about 3 minutes just to share a bit, and I believe you've got some slides to share as well there.
Yeah, all right. Thanks, Steph, and look, thanks, Nicola, for that introduction. Yeah, look, my journey has been a little bit about, and I think it comes back to what Peter Doherty talks about, scientists in the community being able to explain science to the wider community, and I've always, the science of climate change has always been pretty obvious to me for probably 30 years, and I'm getting more and more frustrated that nothing is actually happening on a policy level, particularly 2010, 2020. And I've found a way with the Vets for Climate Action that the veterinary profession and your own sphere of influence is probably where you really want to put your energies into trying to achieve change. And as vets, we've got a huge opportunity. We connect to 2/3 of the Australian population who own pets, and they've got a vested interest in the future of animal health. And so what I'm interested in is using the vets and their connection to that section of the population to really build widespread support for better policy action. And if we can get better policy action from government, then that's probably the most powerful tool for change. So that's kind of really where I'm at the moment. And I'm really kind of interested in how we can get your team engaged within practice to actually start making that connection to the clients and delivering that message. And so that's perhaps the last piece of the puzzle that I'm really intrigued to find out how we can solve that. So maybe I'll, do you want me to do my slides now? Because they'll probably take about 6 or 7 minutes, Steph. So do we want to throw to Elise and Alex first and see how we go for time?
Sure thing, Jeremy. Yeah, well, I might open it up to Alexandra Wallace to share her story. So a little bit about Alex is that she has completed her bachelor's degree in biodiversity and conservation and has been a veterinary nurse since 2018. Alexandra has recently completed our climate care program and is now a valuable member of our climate care program advisory committee. Over to you.
Hey everyone, so I'm Alex, as Steph said. I've got a bit of a background with conservation, sustainability, and the reason that I really got involved is I can see firsthand in clinic the changes that are occurring due to climate change. Being on Sydney's northern beaches, we do see a lot of ticks. Historically, it's only been around summertime and Christmas, but unfortunately, the last few years, they have been year-round. And we're just seeing ticks in every week. This week alone, we've seen at least 5 tick cases in already, and it's only Thursday. We're also seeing the increase of leptospirosis, which has commonly just been up in northern Queensland, but now it is moving further and further south. It has even hit the south coast of New South Wales, which is a bit scary. And then obviously we're all seeing changes with extreme temperatures, bushfires, that is affecting our wildlife and our community. I'm very lucky that my clinic is so behind sustainability and, you know, changing what we can to help improve future generations and just show other clinics that you can be profitable as well as sustainable. The climate care program was absolutely amazing. It reinforced that a lot of things that we are doing, you know, were on the right path, but just gave us that little, you know, click in the right direction of what else we can do and how else we can make an impact. My clinic that we have, since completing the course, my clinic, we've repaired our solar panels and we've got those up and running, which is very exciting. We've got our recycling program going, which is really nice. We're doing the Royal Canin recycling of the food bags, which a lot of clients are really quite excited about. To date, we have recycled 65 kilos of plastic just through those bags. So that's like, what is that? About a Great Dane, or I think it was 14 and a half cats. So that's quite exciting. We've got the staff interested in doing low flow anesthetics, and the vets interested in doing a lot more blocks, CRIs, all of those wonderful things, which means we are decreasing our isoflurane use. Changing hot water systems, we've introduced using vetcheck.it, which is an online electronic form. So we can send our consent forms, do our anesthesias, dentals, everything online, and reduce our paper wastage as well. And yeah, it's always really good. As I said, my team is very much behind everything. And they're all very excited when I come up with little updates where it's just like, oh, do you know how much we've recycled so far this year? Or look, guys, we have decreased our electricity use from last year to this year. And you put it in a little slide and everyone's like, wow. So yeah, it's always very exciting getting everyone, you know, into it in the clinic, and then getting other teams excited outside as well.
Thanks, Alex. Your team, or you and your team, are very much showing that, yes, caring for animals means caring for the climate. Thank you. And we'll ask some, I'm sure there'll be some questions from the audience as we progress, because I'm sure they'd love to hear, like I did, is how you engaged your team. But before we do that, I might just pass over to Dr. Elise Anderson. Elise graduated with honours from the University of Melbourne in 2003 and has practiced as a veterinarian for the last 20 years in a wide variety of clinical settings, settings, including mixed and small animal practice and animal welfare, both here and in the UK. Elise has spent most of her life living and working in rural and regional communities and has experienced firsthand the threat that climate change poses to the animals and people in these areas. Her work with Vets for Climate Action enables her to combine her professional life as a vet with her deep personal concern about climate change and her firm belief and experience in the power of grassroots community advocacy as a vehicle for change. She lives with her family in a beautiful small town in northeast Victoria. Thanks, Elise.
Thank you, and greetings from Tongarong country here in northeast Victoria, where I'm happy to say it's finally raining this evening, which is nice to see because it's been very dry all winter and spring so far. I sort of thought I might just very quickly, in just a couple of minutes, give you a little bit of a personal story of my journey of how I've come to be with Vets for Climate Action and doing the work that I do, because it has been very much a personal journey first before it became professional. So I've even prepared some family happy snaps for you, Steph. I don't know if you wanted to put those photos up just so that you don't all have to look at me all the time. Give you something else to look at. I guess my story starts way back when I was a kid, really, because I grew up on a farm and have always loved horses and animals and the outdoors. And so I've always been concerned about the environment, but I think really my serious concern about climate change and the impacts that it's having on the planet came when these two small creatures on the left of your screen there entered my life. Those are my two boys who are a lot older than that now, although still just as cute, I like to think. They're now 9 and 7. But when they were this age, very tiny, I suffered quite significantly with pretty severe postnatal anxiety and concern about the future of the planet and what we were leaving to our kids. And the damage that climate change was doing was one of the most significant triggers for my anxiety. As well as that, I also live in a significantly bushfire impacted community. We had a lot of damage and a lot of loss of life in this area from the Black Saturday fires in 2009. So those real climate pollution fueled unnatural disasters, as we like to call them, are not an abstract concept here where we live. They're a real fact of life. For me, really the best way I've found over the years to control my anxiety, and I'm sure it's the same for a lot of different people as well, is to take positive action and try and do something to address the problem that causes me to be distressed. And so for initially, a lot of those actions for me were personal and based on our family footprint. So if you want to flick to the next slide, Steph. This is some of my life outside of vet work and Vets for Climate Action. So reducing our personal family footprint at home was things like putting solar panels on the roof of the house, which you can see there. I did some study in permaculture and started to grow a lot of our own food. We worked really hard to reduce our waste at home. We flew a lot less and all of those sorts of things that a lot of people try and do in their personal lives. But I was concerned that my own personal footprint and reducing that wasn't enough in the bigger picture. And so I also decided to get involved in politics as well. Initially, I took part in a volunteer internship with my federal MP in Canberra, which was a very exciting experience, and then have campaigned with her. She's a very climate-friendly independent who's strong on climate and energy policy. And so you can see a few of our gang there in the last federal election campaign. I guess I think, you know, even while I was making all of these steps at home and doing all of this work, there was a real disconnect between everything I did in my personal life and what was happening as soon as I walked in the door at the clinic, where I felt like sustainability in my veterinary career really wasn't on the agenda at all. And it wasn't until I discovered Vets for Climate Action that and started to volunteer with the FCA that the dots really started to connect, and I found some opportunities to be active on this subject of climate change and climate action that I feel so passionate about, but do that within my professional capacity as well. Steph, do you want to flick over to the next slide? Thank you. what my experience with local politics here where I live did teach me, though, is that you know, there's definitely been a narrative, I think, in the media in particular, that there's a divide when it comes to the desire for climate action in the community between city and country, and that people in the city are the ones who are driving the I guess the desire for action on climate change. But we showed here that that's definitely not true. There's definitely people in the regions that do want action on climate change. And the experience also taught me that grassroots campaigns can be really effective and drive really positive change, particularly when those campaigns are led by community champions. And so when we're putting that experience and knowledge into a Vets for Climate Action context, where our message is that climate change hurts the welfare of the animals that we all love and work with, then it's easy to see that vets have an amazing potential to be really great community climate champions. And it's for a number of reasons. Vets are a very highly trusted profession and always have been, where existing and established voices for animal welfare, and often the first point of call for animal owners and people who work with animals for advice on animal health. We're all very skilled and experienced science communicators, as Jeremy already mentioned, and particularly in rural and regional communities, vets are often really well known and highly visible in their communities, so they have a respected position in that way. So it was from those sorts of factors that the rural and regional program that I currently work on was developed. And what I do with my work at the moment, you can see some of the pictures here, is spend a lot of time travelling around in various different parts of Australia, having chats and meeting with clinic staff and other veterinary professionals. And by doing that, we're helping to develop awareness of the impacts of climate change on our profession through knowledge and educational opportunities that we take directly to clinics. We also collect and tell stories about the experiences our profession is having with the impacts of climate change. So you can see a couple of photos here. There's one in the top middle, that's Rochester Vet Clinic in Northern Victoria that had a flood. And the bottom left is Lismore Vet Clinic, and that water level is up to nearly the roof line of their second story. So that was a horrendous flood back in 2022. So telling those stories is an important part of the work that the rural and regional program does. And we're also encouraging vets and vet nurses to become climate advocates, to be comfortable having conversations about climate change with colleagues, their clients and their communities, to do things like using social media to share messages, connecting with their local politicians, and in some cases engaging with media, either print or television or radio as well. I think for me, advocacy goes hand in hand with efforts towards actually reducing our carbon footprint and developing sustainability in our practices, because it, as well as reducing our own physical impact, it helps to push for better climate policy on a broader level as well. We've been doing some survey work with the rural and regional program that's shown that 93% of the vets that we've surveyed in our profession acknowledge that advocacy for climate action is a responsibility of our profession. So that's encouraging. We just need to help people with ways to get that done. Thanks, Steph. I think that will do for now.
Thanks, Elise. Appreciate that one. And yes, certainly climate change is a veterinary problem. Is a little bit summarising the work that Elise was talking about, unique voice in the climate movement, highly respected profession. I believe vets are rated 4th after firefighters. So there you go. Nicola, would you like to share a few things that some of your members are doing, and some of the steps that ZAR is taking in relation to sustainability and caring for climate?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Steph. So we have we have 98 members within the association across Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea. And within that, we've got, I think, 4 organisations that are net zero. And then I think, between net zero all the way down to organisations, private regional organisations that are starting out on their sustainability journey. From the association perspective, we run an accreditation program, and within that there is a sustainability module. We're coming into our second round of that. Of the first round, it was really around acknowledging that an organisation needs to have responsibility for its footprint, and then currently just going into the second round, there needs to be the opportunity for organisations to demonstrate positive change in how they're operating, and for us, we follow several SDGs, and we work alongside the World Association's impact on planet strategy, and that has very clear guidelines on what organisations can do across all SDGs. They've also provided a guide to carbon reduction as well, and that as well supports organisations in their journey to develop strategies for changing in their emissions and things like that. So we feel that our organisations are well supported, both by the amount of information that is available in any case, but also from assets that are developed specifically for zoos, aquariums and wildlife parks, those types of organisations. And then we have that accreditation program to measure them along their way. We understand as well from a European perspective, particularly European, that people that are travelling and coming down to Australia, there is a lot of I guess, a feeling of responsibility of the carbon footprint of travel. And so when arriving in Australia, the experiences that people are wanting to select are starting to gear very much around organisations that can demonstrate responsible, sustainable practices. So that as well is sort of driving an increased focus in the way organisations are looking at their operations. So that's probably a nutshell of, there's a lot more detail below that, but we're really encouraging our organisations. As you saw that presentation that I showed, we've had that presentation presented at our recent conference and workshops with our member organisations on what innovation that they can bring. And as I mentioned before, the really sort of exciting or important piece is, how can you actually sort of push this out beyond your own organisation? And as zoos, similar to vets, they're assets of the community, which really does put these organisations into a leadership position. And how can you leverage that, or how can you use that that power that you have of that position to, create partnerships for other services or organisations within the community that can actually amplify the impact. So lots of things that you can do both within your organisation but also within the community, and taking, I guess, that perspective of your position within the community and using it to leverage and educate other people as well.
Thanks so much. That aligns very much with, yes, Jeremy and Elise. We're all seeing a common theme there. I'm just going to add myself to the conversation there. Look, I might open the floor to anyone who would like to ask any questions. Feel free to pop them in the chat, or you're welcome to come off mute to ask that. But before I go to the audience, I do just have, Alex, I'm really interested to hear from you as to how you've engaged your team with the sustainability journey that Monavale went on. Were there fun things? How did you get them involved?
Yeah, so at first it was a bit tough, because you kind of just feel like that overbearing parent where you're just like, oh, could you not do that? So you do have to really find a way to make it fun and engage everyone. And also, even sometimes no one likes doing it, but admit your own faults and things like that, and admit when you've made a mistake. Like today I tossed some batteries in the bin. I'm like, no, I can recycle them. Then I had to scoop through the bin, and everyone thought that was a bit funny. So things that we've done, as I said before, I've gotten them engaged during the work meetings, where I'll be like, just a little update. This is what we've done. Funny things like, as I said, with the Royal Canin recycling, and just being like, oh, did you know we've recycled a Great Dane? Everyone's like, what? And then you kind of explain it. And then just where I have put, signs around, like on the bins of, what can be recycled in this bin and what you can do. just making them, bright, colourful, putting fun cartoons on them, and just making people really have a look. Other things that we did as well, one of the recommendations from the climate care program was going through a bin and just really sorting it out through one of the meetings. So it was just like, okay. And then everyone gets a bit, not embarrassed, but it's like, wow, like, a lot of that can be recycled. It's like, yeah, like, it just takes a moment sometimes just to, think, and just being really friendly and approachable, because, sometimes people just don't know, and they'll come up to you and be like, oh, where, can I recycle this? Where can I put it? And then just, explaining, yes, you can recycle this. This goes here, and this is where it goes through. So we use a company called Recycle Smart, where they take a lot of soft plastics, styrofoam, cups, electronics, material waste, like you name it. So a lot of people now getting really excited where they come up and they're like, what can I do with it? And you're like, oh my gosh, okay, wow. So it's really just, being that approachable person, getting them excited, and just getting them involved, really. Because if you're just, skulking around the back, everyone just doesn't really know what's going on. So just, yeah, that's how I've managed, and it seems to be going quite well so far.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Alex. I know when you were talking about some of the things you've done, you talked about low flow and reducing your anesthetic gas. I know, Jeremy, that's been a big thing for you. So what do you think's made a big difference in your practice, Jeremy, and with your team? And yeah, I'll leave you to answer that one.
Yeah, thanks, Steph. Yeah, look, I think it's a little bit not dissimilar to what Alex is that I guess my enthusiasm has dragged everyone along, but then it kind of, it's like the rolling stone gathering moss, that people start to experience the benefits, and it kind of connects with their own sort of thought processes in dealing with climate change and that sort of thing, and feel like they're doing something positive, and then we start to see lots of benefits. And one of the important things, I think, with change management, obviously, is to have a compelling why, and making that connection between animal health and climate change. But then how do you embed that in the team? And I think that the repetition is really important. So keep bringing the message up in a whole lot of different ways. They say in marketing that you have to see, hear, and something like, is it 10 or 15 times before it becomes normal and you go, yeah, I need one of those. Well, that's kind of what we're doing around the clinic. So we use life stage boards, we use discussions, that's an agenda item on every team meeting, and then making events like the ZerOctober actually has been a bit of an innovation. I did have some slides, but we don't have time to go through them, but there's one thing on one of the slides that I would like to share. So if I can...
Go for it, Jeremy. And I might actually, Helen has put a question in the chat that I think is appropriate for you and might be answered on one of your slides. And that is, how do you offset the carbon miles of imported dog foods and medications? And I know, for, offsets, there are such things that you can purchase to offset, and we certainly suggest, reducing as much as you can in practice. But Jeremy, I'll leave that one for you to delve into a little bit more.
Yeah, look, pet foods is quite a complicated one. You think, well, it's just about meat-based pet food, but in actual fact, the meat is only one component of it, because there's the processing, there's the storage, there's the transport, dry versus refrigerated versus canned. They all require quite a lot of energy, and so at the moment, there isn't any simple solutions other than to use offsets and then to try and, I guess, buy local. So it's something I really haven't explored in any great detail. I know there's insect-based protein pet foods now available in Australia, and then there's companies like Leica who use as much renewable energy in their processing, and then use offsets to create a carbon neutral product. But I guess that one of the points on my slides, if I'll just quickly go through them, is really that we really want to try and reduce our carbon emissions as much as possible. And then when we get to the last 10%, that's when we should be thinking about offsets. So I'm just going to go through this a little bit more quickly because we don't really have a lot of time. But what I was going to show you here, if I can just get that off my screen, is can everyone see that down? Is it in your left corner or right corner?
It's in the right.
Yeah, so ZerOctober is one of the ideas that one of our team came up with for ZerOctober. And I guess it's off the back of the idea of a little bit about what Alex said, is about how can we make things fun, or how can we gamify things to get a little bit of competition going. And so the idea of our climate champion was to make a bingo board for ZerOctober. And there's about 9 different things that you can do that improve sustainability in the clinic. There's things like bringing a leftover lunch or having a plastic-free lunch, taking a load of batteries to Bunnings, and even having a climate conversation. And we've defined that as any conversation that can include the 3 words climate, animal and health in any way, shape or form. If you can string that together and put it into a conversation with a climate, then we'll tick that off. And you can see, I don't know whether you can see there's little boxes at the bottom there, and you put your initials every time you've done one of those. And what we're doing is aiming to count up how many points we get in a month. And then that sets a baseline for next year. We'll have some prizes. And yeah, I thought that was a really innovative way to do it. And I think it comes back to what Nicola was saying about once your team gets engaged, then the innovation starts to flow. And this is a really good example of it, because I think, and back again to what Elise was saying, is that climate change, if you really think about it, can be pretty depressing and overwhelming. And I think that puts a lot of people off. So we've got to look at another way of engaging those people in the middle who know it's an issue, but how can we make it fun, or how can we make this a space where they want to be? So yeah, so I guess the gamification and the repetition to bring it front of mind all the time are a couple of tactics that we've been using in our clinic to try and get the team more engaged and ultimately make that connection with the clients who own 2/3 of the Australian population's pets and animals. And just lastly, the last one, I'm going to skip through the anaesthesia because I've presented on that before, but this last one is about what the benefits of a good sustainability program can do. And so if we're ultimately looking to buy carbon credits, then I think we should be looking at carbon credits that relate to, let's get rid of that. Is that?
Yeah, we can see the biodiversity carbon credits. Yeah.
So yeah, so rather than say picking carbon credits that relate to electricity supply or something like that, there's only really the economic resources for, if we've got the 3 groups of animals we deal with, there's pets, they've got the economic resources of their owners, we've got livestock who have the economic resources of farmers to change production systems or move. But when it comes to wildlife, they've really only got the resources of the government and philanthropy. So I think that there's an opportunity for vets to start, if they're going to buy carbon credits and support biodiversity, that's really the way to go. And I've put up some examples there from a company called Greenfleet who are doing just that. And the other benefit of that is that they also run tree planting days and opportunities to get out in the country and spend some time with nature. And I think that's a really good opportunity for your team to engage with something that they might be involved in supporting, and also good for mental health and a whole lot of other physical benefits as well. So that was the only other thing that I wanted to touch on. So I might just stop there, Steph. So just for the mindful,
Thanks, Jeremy.
running out of time.
Yeah, look, I am very conscious of time, but there's a great question that's come through on the chat, and then I do actually have another question for the panel. From RLW, the message says, "Hi all, I'm a wildlife carer, former vet nurse. Single-use syringes is something I'm concerned about. What is the best sustainability practice for A, biologically contaminated ones, and B, others such as those used for feeding and flushing?" Do any of you have any ideas?
We don't have any simple solutions from that, other than we reuse those sorts of syringes for euthanasia patients, but that doesn't consume a huge amount. But yeah, look, and this is, look, I guess it highlights the whole issue with what we call our Scope 3 emissions, which is really all our medical consumables, and we're all appalled at the amount of disposable stuff that we use. And they're the most difficult ones to solve in terms of emissions. And they're going to require that supply chain interaction that Nicola was talking about. That's how they start to solve these things in other industries. And I think that's where we need to start pushing back to suppliers and saying, well, we see it's a problem, we can't solve it, how can you help us? And there's a lot going on in the medical field in that area. And so I guess that is a difficult area to address. But if we're going to start addressing climate change, we've got to look at our carbon footprint, and there are a lot more easier gains to get at the moment before we get to, I guess, invested in trying to solve some of the most difficult ones, which is your reusable syringes. So I'm sorry I haven't got a magic answer for that one.
No,
I get it.
You raise a very valid point about, and it was something I was thinking about with Helen's question too, about how do you offset, you know, the cost of the carbon cost of medications. And you raised a really good point about, you know, basically procurement, or, you know, pushing it back up the food chain, for want of a better phrase, and asking the companies that are producing it in the first place to be part of the solution as well. Now, we've talked a lot about things that, you know, steps that people are taking in practice, and there's some wonderful initiatives there. But we know that there are a number of vets and vet nurses and professionals who are no longer working in clinic, might be retired, or just can't convince their boss to take action. Are there any other options for people to take? Elise, I think this might be a question for you.
It is a question for me, probably, Steph, but and partly because that was precisely my situation, you know, as someone who works part-time in clinical practice, and in a clinic where you know, until recently, well, in fact, the clinic I worked in has just not long closed because the owner retired, and so I was going to always be you know, struggling to convince my boss to come on board with the climate care program when he wasn't planning to be in his practice for too much longer. So there's certainly plenty of folks out there, I think, who are in a similar scenario to me and want to be able to take more individual personal actions, I guess, rather than clinic-based ones. And I think that's where advocacy-based activities become really valuable, because they can help to create some meaningful change without needing to, you know, have that impact on a clinic level. And there's lots and lots of different options. I think, you know, as Jeremy was just talking about climate conversations, I think we can never underestimate the impact of that. Certainly, there's been, I remember seeing some polling last year from the Australia Institute when the referendum for the Indigenous Voice to Parliament campaign was on, that showed that the vast majority of people now cite their most trusted sources of information as friends, family, and personal connections, as opposed to media, politicians, and those kind of further apart sources. And so the more we can be comfortable having just friendly, interested, convivial conversations about climate change, and particularly its impacts on animals, then we can actually have a really big impact that way. I think animals are a great way into that conversation, because it doesn't matter where you are on the political spectrum, or sort of what your beliefs are potentially about the science. Everybody loves animals, and framing climate change in that way, in that it is impacting on the welfare of animals, is a great place to start, with common ground with all sorts of people. So climate conversations is one excellent thing, and we've got some resources on our website as to how to have some conversations, how to deal with some tricky ones. Simple things like sharing information and messages on social media, whether that's clinic social media or personal social media, can be really helpful. Having a climate care sticker on your car, climate change Vets for Climate Action, sticker on your car, or one of our posters up somewhere visible, is also great for just, you know, opening the ground for conversations as well. The more we engage with our elected representatives also, the better, because they do pay attention to what their constituents are saying. And every politician I've ever met is really interested in hearing what the veterinary community has to say. So I'm a serial emailer of my MP, the Prime Minister, the Environment Minister. Every time I've got a bee in my bonnet, I get on the email and write to them, because it is actually effective. They do count those interactions and keep track of what people are saying. So that's also really valuable activities that people can do off their own bat. It only takes a few minutes, and it doesn't need any great resources.
Thanks, Elise. That's a really good segue into what we'd love everyone on the masterclass tonight to consider, is taking one action this ZerOctober. My first action is to thank our panelists for their time this evening, and really appreciate what you're doing and how you're bringing your teams along with you and the community. I think that's really important. And we do want to inspire others. So the QR code on your screen right now will take you to a page on our website that has a number of resources and a number of suggested activities that you could take. This month, there's some team activities, there's some emission reduction activities, and to Elisa's point, there's some posters and things that you can download as well if you'd like to share anything within your clinic. And of course, on our social media, Claire has been very busy putting up posts every day that we invite you to share widely. Another action, and here's another QR code for you, is that thanks to our partners Resync and Thuri, who we've recently joined up with, they're offering a free energy assessment to every clinic. It's as simple as scanning that QR code, completing a form, uploading 2 power bills, and they'll be in touch with advice. It's free, completely free. There's no obligation, but we just want everyone to sort of, take that first step to potentially looking at, moving into renewables or some of those big ticket items that could really make a big difference for you. Before I let you all go, fully appreciate that we've gone over time. We'd love to see you again next month for our next masterclass with the wonderful Erica Honey, who is going to be talking about disasters in climate change and how you can build practice resilience. She's got a lot of experience in this area, and you can register on our website, and we'll send out the details with our next email. And last but not least, and it's certainly not least because we want to continue to offer these free masterclasses and continue to do the advocacy work as well as our, driving more sustainable veterinary care. I really urge you, if you don't already, to please support our work. Every dollar helps, and every donation over $2 is tax deductible. So please take a sec to jump on our website, to scan that QR code, and we send our heartfelt thanks for your support and for being with us tonight. As I mentioned, we will be at Vet Expo next week, so please come by to stand H55, say hi, attend our talks. We have Dr. Jeanette Kessel's presenting on Thursday, twice I think on Thursday. We have Marianne Marin talking as well, and I guess I volunteered myself to give a presentation on Friday. So plenty of opportunity to continue engaging on this very important topic about more sustainable veterinary care and taking climate action for our animals. Thank you all. If we've not answered any of your question or you have more thoughts, please do get in touch through info@vfca.org.au. Night all. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.